Well, today is a really, really exciting day. We have, in case you didn't see, a new logo, okay? A new brand, if you will. We have some new interior design that's almost done. The vision behind that was, you are welcome here, you know? And you see it on every guest services volunteer shirt. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to welcome people here. We've done some work on the check-in to continue to help families check in faster and in a more relational way. And it's just a really big day. It's a really big day in the life of our church. And before I get into today's teaching, I want to say thank you to several people. The first group of people I'd like to say thank you to is thank you to those of you that have been committed to First Christian for a number of years. We showed a video kind of giving you a glimpse as what it has taken. And let me tell you what it has taken to partner with God and build a church. It has taken an incredible amount of hard work, an incredible amount of sacrifice, an incredible amount of humility, an incredible amount of it's not about me, it's about God and what he wants. And so if you've been a part of this church for any number of years, thank you for your dedication to make this place special, because it is. You might not see it, but there's a kind of genuine care here that's real, that's not everywhere else. And you created that, and you should be proud of that, and you should never quit. You should never, ever quit. I want to thank, really, there was two groups of what I'll call expert volunteers that worked on two different teams to help us think about what should our interior look like, what should our new logo look like, and they worked hours and hours and hours to advise and decide some of these things. People that love this church, people who are good at what they do. And so if you served on one of those teams, thank you for that. You did such a fantastic job. And I want to thank the donors. There was a few donors who gave out of just an overflow of generosity because they wanted to fund the vision of where we're going as a church. And so if you gave, and there's just a few of you, I mean thousands and thousands, around $100,000 to do all the things that we've done so far. Thank you so much for that. That's just incredible. We wouldn't be who we are without you. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank volunteers. Many people helped us do several things over the past couple of weeks. Wow. I'm just so impressed by this team, and I'm so excited about where we're going in the future. Now, there's this town in South Africa called Kimberling, okay? And in Kimberling, there is this giant hole. It's actually filled with water now, but it's about almost 800 feet deep. And this is the largest man-made hole in the world. And they have a viewing tower, and people come and look at this hole, and they go, look at this huge hole that somebody dug, And you start to wonder, well, how did this hole get there? Well, the hole got there because, actually, it wasn't a hole, it was a hill. And a man was walking by one day, and he saw some boys, and they were throwing pebbles. And one of the pebbles that the boy was throwing kind of glimmered in the sunlight. And immediately that man recognized, that's not a pebble, that's a diamond. And so the potential of there being more diamonds led to people from all over the world coming to this town using primitive digging tools, suffering all kinds of struggles like deprivation, famine, exhaustion, to see if they could find what's underneath all of that, And so people from all over the world came. They came to dig this hole and suffer just extreme circumstances. The conditions were so bad that people were stealing from one another. Even murder was reported as to having taken place because of the potential of what they would find. So when you think about it, why all these people came to this place was because something valuable was discovered. That's why they went there. That's why they went through everything that they went through. Now, you might think, what compels or what motivates, what has motivated us as a church to renovate some, to come up with a new brand, to put a new sign out there? Why did we decide to do all of this? Let me tell you. 2 Corinthians 5:14 and 15 says this. For Christ's love compels us, because we are convinced that one died for all, and therefore all died. And he died for all, that those who live, pay attention to this part, should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. Why are we doing all this? Why is this necessary? I'll tell you why. Because we have discovered the most valuable thing in all of the world. In Jesus, there is a way to know God, and there's a way to get back to God. There is a purpose for every life, and there is freedom only found in Jesus. There is one person who will satisfy our thirsty soul. And the best part is it's free. And it's freeing. And according to Paul, it's for everyone. And if you find this most valuable thing, a relationship with Jesus, your way back to God, well, then everything you do is no longer for yourself. It flows through what you've discovered in Jesus. It's why you make the decisions that you make. It's why you make the sacrifices you make. It's why you go there. It's why you're here. All of those kinds of things. What's compelling us? It's the same thing that compelled the people to start this church in 1955. It's a genuine conviction. In other words, if the gospel is true, then we have to. We have to start a church. We have to build a church because everyone needs Jesus. Everyone needs him. Your family members need Jesus. The people in your class, if you're a teacher, needs Jesus. If you run a business, your employees need Jesus. If you're shopping for groceries later today, the people there need Jesus. And so because everyone needs Jesus, especially us, especially everyone, then we have to. We have to. And the church is in possession of the most valuable news in all the world. Listen to how God describes what we're responsible for as a church. Verse 18 of 2 Corinthians 5 says, all this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ. So we've been brought into right relationship with him. We've discovered the most valuable thing, a relationship with God. And when we receive that, God then gives us something else. And he gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us, that's you and me, the message of reconciliation. We are therefore, again, that's you and me. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. I don't know how you can be a follower without being an ambassador. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. So we implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. This is why we're here. We have discovered the most valuable thing, and if we genuinely believe it, we receive the ministry of reconciliation, which is helping other people get right with God, just like we've gotten right with God and experienced the incredible changes that's done in our life. That is what a church is. A church is a people in a place, in a geographical place, a people. It's a people. It's not a building. It's not a brand. It's not a website. It's a people. It's a living, moving, breathing people in a specific geographic location through whom God makes an appeal for everyone to be reconciled to him. We say it like this. Our mission statement is to make followers of Jesus today. When? Tomorrow? No, today. When? Next week? No, today. There was a specific urgency in our mission statement because a lot of times we understand, all right, God wants me to be a part of the ministry of reconciliation. What is the ministry of reconciliation? I need to be a part of making followers of Jesus, but I'll get around to that later. No, you don't understand. If we've discovered the most valuable thing, then nothing else matters. We have to come build this because everyone needs Jesus. And so what I want to talk about for the rest of our time together is our vision. A vision is a little different than a mission. A mission tells us what we do. This is why we're here. We're here to make followers of Jesus. We're here to help people be reconciled to God. But a vision is a motivating picture. It's a future that we're not at. So in other words, a vision is what would have to be true in the future to indicate that we've been successful at our mission. What does a future look like where we've had incredible success as a church doing what God has given us, the ministry of reconciliation? And anytime a church wants to talk about, hey, what is our vision? We must first ask, well, what's the picture God wants? Because we don't need any more human visions. We don't need good visions, we need God visions. And in 2 Peter 3:9, we get God's vision. The Lord is not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. This is God's vision. When God sees the church and when he sees a successful church, this is what he's imagining. A group of people in a specific place who I'm making my appeal through. See, God's vision, when he looks at the future, what he hopes for is he hopes for a growing family. That's what God wants. As many people as possible to discover the most valuable thing in all of the world in Jesus. And so one of the reasons why we rebranded was because we want to remind every single person that calls this church home or ever attends this church, we want to remind, hey, this is what we're here for. This is who we are, and this is where we're called to go. And so as you see the new logo, it's in the shape of a water drop. And that's intentional because right outside our building, it says the reason why this building is here, it's because we're here for anyone who is thirsty, let them come. And so First Christian Church, you'll see the FCC inside the water drop. This is a reminder to every single one of us that God's vision for us as a church family isn't just to exist here, isn't just to come and have a nice time at a service and a place to raise our family. No, we're here for everyone who is thirsty to come and find fulfillment and refreshment and transformation. And the only thing that will ever quench and satisfy their thirst, the thing that we found that is most valuable, and that is Jesus. And so every time somebody sees a water drop on a sign outside, every time you see it, I want you to remember we're here to give the community around us a drink because they're thirsty for something spiritual, they're thirsty for something real, they're thirsty for something tangible, they're thirsty for some proof that there's a God in heaven who loves them. And that's what we're here for. Did you know how this church got started? Well, there was a family, the Jones family, was attending a church in Union, and they couldn't make it to church quite that often. And so the minister of the church at the time said, hey, how come you haven't been able to make it to church so much? You know, what's really funny as a minister is sometimes I'll say hi to people, and people will begin to tell me why they haven't been here, and I wasn't even thinking anything of it. It's like, I didn't even know you weren't here, but thanks for the information, you know? Now I can, ask you more questions or whatever, but I honestly didn't even know. But anyway, he's like, how come you guys haven't been coming? And they said, well, we don't have a car. So to go from Washington to Union, it's kind of difficult in the 50s, And so That was a barrier for this family to be able to get to church. And so what did they do? They said, well, maybe we should start a church in Washington so it's not so hard to get to Union. And that's what they did. 3 families, 29 people altogether, started this church in 55. In 59, we moved into our very first building. In 1973, we bought some property on Highway 47. Great location, great investment. In 87, it was expanded, and then God started partnering with the leaders of this church and the people of this church and build that church to where a new barrier came, and that barrier was there was just no room to put people. And so here we are at this location right now. And let me just tell you something about vision that we can learn from our story as a church. A vision is clarified when you identify barriers to the desired future that God wants. God dreams of a growing family. Currently, we've had an amazing start to the year. Several Sundays this year, we've had over 700 people here on a Sunday, so we're probably averaging just under that. About 200 of those, these are rough numbers, about 200 of those are people under the age of 18, okay? And that's very exciting. Let me just paint a picture for you. That's 700 people on a Sunday. We could double that because we have room. God's vision is for a growing family. Easily, we could double that. We have the chairs, we have the classroom space, we have the facility that's been provided for. It's here. We could probably even go further than that if we wanted to. And so there's a lot of things to be excited about. We have a great vision if it's God's vision. We have a great building. We have a nice logo. We have a really cool sign outside. We have a history of growth and a history of just strong, faithful, devoted followers of Jesus. And we have a great God. We have the most valuable relationship in the world through Jesus. But we have a great problem. Maybe a better word would be it's a crisis. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Because I think every Christian in America, in other parts of the world too, but I can only speak to what I know, knows that there's a problem. Knows that there's something new we've been wrestling with for quite some time. We haven't really been able to talk about it, but I want to talk about that a little bit today. And let me just say this. This isn't just a problem. It's not just a crisis. It's a barrier. This isn't like past barriers if you've been here at church for a while. It's not like, oh, we need a different location or we need a bigger building. This is a different kind of barrier. We have the space. But if we don't fix this barrier that is keeping people who need Jesus, the most valuable thing they could ever discover, if we don't address this, then we will not accomplish God's picture, God's dream, God's vision. Let me lay some groundwork so you understand this. So the church in America actually early on wasn't very present at all until the Great Awakening in the 1700s, when there was an enormous amount of American, Reformation type things happening, some great thinkers along the way, and the church began to grow. There was another one in the early 1800s, which is where our movement of churches happened. Basically, it's a group of people getting around and saying, okay, what does the Bible say? What does God want? And what do we need to do as a result? And these great spiritual movements happened in our country. There was another one post-World War II in the 50s, where there was just a sense of just like we want to build a church, and there was just a huge rise after World War II, and things were happening in America that were just conducive to the church growing, and so that was happening. But all the while in America, and you know this, and you felt this, while there was this church movement happening, there was also a secular movement happening. And I don't say secular meaning bad, I just mean that's just how I describe it. It's secular. So there was the scientific revolution. There's the age of skepticism that has come in. There's even now to where now we don't even know what's true about anything anybody says ever from any source. That's kind of where we went. And within that, because of that, everything's under question, and there's this kind of pluralism. What is pluralism? Pluralism is where there's many different ideas out there, and you just kind of pick, we're all okay, as long as you don't mess with me and I don't mess with you, you follow your idea, I follow my idea, and let's just be a tolerant kind of society. And these are things that are happening. Well, right now, because of those two things, we are in a period that people are calling the Great Dechurching. This is what you feel. The church is on a steep decline in America. Have you noticed? I don't think you have, because it's actually worse than you might realize. Let me give you a quote. Some people started noticing this in Orlando, and they put together this survey, and here's what they found. More people have left the church in the last 25 years than all the new people who became Christians from the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, and the Billy Graham Crusades combined. We are in the middle of a crisis. 15% of Americans, essentially, according to that study, have said no thanks when it comes to being a part of a church or Christianity. Why is that? Well, there's two reasons that surfaced. There's multiple subgroups, basically two groups of people, and I'm going to give you both of them. The first one is the reason why people have de-churched or stopped going to church or whatever is this is the smaller sample size, but basically the way they've been described is they casually have de-churched. Well, I moved and then we just never, 3 years later, we should probably get into church, Or, it's just inconvenient to go. And this is casually de-churched. Or there's other priorities. So we're going to do this. Never mind that stuff we just read about. No longer do I live for myself, even though I've discovered the most valuable thing. But people have just decided, hey, we're going to do some other stuff. Here's one that was really shocking. Well, it's not shocking to me, but it shouldn't make us all sit up straight. Is one of the biggest reasons that people de-church in this category was, well, I just haven't found a church I like. It's just interesting. The second group is church casualties. So this is the larger group of people who have stopped going to church, and they give much more, just, if we don't analyze this, we're really going to miss out on what I think we're supposed to learn from them. But these are things like church scandal, where, or church hurt, The leaders said one thing and did another, or the views, especially the political views, but maybe the moral views started changing. You don't hold my view anymore, and my view's evolved, and yours isn't. And that goes both ways. Either the church went one way, or the person went the other way, and that's why these people have backed away. Another reason that was given was they just had negative experiences with Christians, and this was a huge segment. You know someone like this. When you talk about, hey, why don't you go to church, or why isn't this a thing for you? A lot of times it'll be like, well, and they'll give you a negative experience they had with someone. Right? This is a huge problem. 14%, only 14%, because they no longer believed. It was all like, no, somebody was hurtful to me, or I had this negative experience, or I don't agree about this, and so now I just don't go anymore whatsoever. There's at least 4 major reasons contributing to the great dechurching, as I've looked at it. There's probably more. But one is very practical. Churches are closing faster than the new ones are opening. That's just, if you don't open more churches for a growing population, then it's not going to grow as fast. And so that's just a very practical one. The second one that I've seen and I look out and I go is we have a culture, and I'm probably part of the problem, we have a culture of church, consumerism, consumer church, consumer Christianity. Basically, we look at churches and we go, what does it do for me? What's it going to do for me? And because we've been so conditioned in our society to treat everything like a product and what it does for us. And so there's definitely a posture of consumer Christianity where we're looking for the best and, all the things that meet our needs. And not necessarily that that's bad in every aspect, but in general, an idea of church shopping is kind of like, there's probably a part of it that's probably not a good thing. Another one is inauthentic Christianity. There's so many of us, me at times, we claim to have the most valuable thing in the world, and then we treat people so invaluably. And that has impact. Another one is more subtle. It's not that you did something actively to hurt somebody in their pursuit of Jesus. It's more passive or apathetic. And so a lot of young people is a big part of this demographic of leaving the church. Well, a lot of them grew up in a family where they went to church or they did the things. But what they say is they were just not the faith they saw from their parents. Every parent should be leaning in right now. The faith they saw lived out from their parents, it just wasn't that compelling. It just didn't seem like it really made a difference. More than just we go to church on Sunday, we attend a few events. It is the largest and this is another study, it is the largest and fastest numerical shift in religious affiliation in the history of this country. Even in the most optimistic scenarios, Christian affiliation in the U.S. shrinks. So this is a forecast. It shrinks dramatically. And in our best case, over 1 million youth, do I need to say that again? 1 million youth, at least nominally in the church today, will choose, if trends don't change, they will choose to leave each year for the next 3 decades. 35 million youth raised in families that call themselves Christian will say they are not by 2050 if the trends continue. And the majority of people, the majority of young people, and I'm a dad, I have 3 kids. The majority of young people who leave, they didn't go through a crisis of faith. This is what the research is showing. They didn't intellectually reject the idea of God. They just weren't interested in the difference a Christian life made based upon the evidence they saw on a day in and day out basis. What does this mean? This means that the church appeal, the appeal of the church, is a humble moment for us right now. Well, it's just not very appealing to people right now. It looks like it's on the way out. Or it doesn't make a difference, or it doesn't look like it really impacts life the way it claims that it should. And let me just ask a question. Does this bother you? Yes. Does it bother you that our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors, our coworkers, our classmates are trending towards deciding what you've decided is the most valuable thing in all the world? Well, it's just not that appealing. It's just not that appealing. Does it bother you that everything is trending seemingly away? Because everyone needs Jesus. What are we going to do? Well, the researchers that have been working on this are calling the next 30 years the great opportunity. For the next 30 years is the largest missionary opportunity in American history. It's a great opportunity for us to be who Christ has called us to be authentically. There's going to be some great barriers. And any church that wants to create the future God imagines, a growing family, a picture, they're going to have to make 3 decisions. Acts chapter 15. The early church had a great vision to be a growing family in Judea to Samaria to the ends of the earth, right? Well, in Acts chapter 15, the church growth was slowing. And it was getting so bad that there was this big council that was called. And the who's who of church were there, of the early Christian movement. And so why was the early church starting to slow in its growth? Well, Acts 15:5 tells us, then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, the Gentiles must be circumcised and required to keep the law of Moses. At first glance, you probably don't see much, but what's happening is the people who were a part of the movement, the people who were a part of the church, they started throwing up all kinds of barriers that made it hard for people outside the church to come in the church. And it was so bad that it was actually contradicting the grace of the gospel. They were saying, no, you don't just have to believe in Jesus, you also have to do this and this. And it was like a gospel plus kind of faith, and that's not very appealing. And so people were saying no. It was slowing. I'm spiritually thirsty, but if that's what you're asking me to do, a form of legalism, then I want to do that. I'm not thirsty for that. And so this council was called to make some key decisions. What are we going to do, early church, to keep the vision on track? And so in verse 12, it says, the whole assembly became silent as they listened. Why did they get silent in the middle of this council? Because, you got to imagine this. Peter, who walked with Jesus, starts to speak. Barnabas, the great encourager who's went on missionary journey after missionary journey, starts to speak. Paul, the converted Jew, who is the missionary to the Gentiles, the people outside of the church movement, and James, the very brother of Jesus, are the keynote speakers at this council. And so everybody else is quiet. They're like, here are the guys. And they're there because they're concerned. They're concerned that the vision that God has is slowing. And so they're asking the question, what is slowing the vision and what are we going to do? Because we have to do something. And so then James says something that has unleashed the growth of the New Testament, because James said, this is why you're here. Because it was a critical decision. Here's what he says. Verse 19, James, the brother of Jesus, it is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for Gentiles who are turning to God. We should not make it difficult for those who haven't been reconciled to God to be reconciled to God. Because everyone needs Jesus, and because God's vision is for a growing family, what did they decide? They decided we need to remove unnecessary barriers. And so they start asking the question, what are the things making the appeal unnecessarily unappealing? And in this case, and it's probably true in our case, there was some behavior of those of them inside the church at that time, and probably of those of us inside the church at this time, and it was becoming a barrier to anyone on the outside wanting to be a part of that. It wasn't prescribed by the gospel, it was an add-on. It was an attitude toward. And that's what they're correcting. It's already difficult enough. Maybe it's been so long for you. It's already difficult enough to come to church with a past. It's already difficult enough to come to church looking for hope, even though you're skeptical of everything that somebody like me is saying. It's already difficult enough to give the church a chance to help you explore faith and life and the meaning of your life. Leaving sin and sin behind is already difficult enough. We should not be a people through who our behavior is throwing any more barriers up to keep people from wanting to come and find Jesus. It's already hard enough. And so what do? We need to identify the current barriers in our time, the current behaviors in our time that are keeping people from wanting to even step foot in the door or watch us online or have a conversation with you. We need to remove them. And sometimes they just happen, and sometimes we create them. But we have to tear them down. And that's what the New Testament church did. And then they reformed the appeal. Because every time you look in Scripture, over and over and over, in the Old Testament, you would see people who would follow God and then forget what God's vision was. I mean, it would be like overnight. It's like, did you not just remember what God told you to do, and now you're doing something else completely? And we're just a people that are prone to that. And we just need to be reminded. See, what we do is sometimes we make church something else than being a place where God is reconciling the world to himself. We drift from grace. We add things on. We drift from vision. And whenever a church drifts from being focused on being for everyone who is thirsty, that community becomes unappealing. Instead, James says in verse 20, we should write to them. So in their time, they said, hey, let's stop focusing on all this other stuff, but here's what you should focus on to make sure that the community is appealing to people who are on the outside. He says, telling them to abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from the meat of strangled animals, and from blood. Okay, we can't apply all of those here and this time. Some of them we might be able to apply, but the idea is still good. Every church location, including this one, in every time, in every demographic, in every geography, wherever you are, when they see the slowing vision of God's dream, we should all ask why. And then when we figure out why, we should figure out what we're going to do. So instead, let's not do that. Instead, we should do this. See, it's our job to throw open wide the doors of our church, in our lives, in our hearts, because everyone that doesn't have Jesus is thirsty. And we have the most valuable thing they could ever stumble across. And so we must be the most welcoming place that anyone could ever imagine. We must not add anything unnecessarily hard for someone to be able to come to know Jesus. We should be all about doing the things that help us reconcile people to God and getting rid of the things that make people go, I don't know if I want to do that, as long as it's not gospel-driven, you know? And so we need to decide to remove barriers. Look what happened when they made this decision. The churches were strengthened in faith, and they grew daily in numbers. By removing unnecessary barriers and reforming the appeal so it looks more like what Jesus imagined, the people in the church already started growing like they've never grown before. They're strengthened. They built muscles they never had, you know? And then this other beautiful picture is now all of these new people who need Jesus are coming in. What strengthens a church? It's when the existing Christians adopt a posture to welcome new people in. It develops a muscle structure that brings us back to the gospel and to the point of our life and faith. It's not a deeper Bible study class that brings you closer to Jesus. What is it? It's discipling someone who's far from Jesus back to God to where you get to see Jesus again through their eyes. That's what we're here for. So they removed barriers, they reformed the appeal, and this is so important, and you'll see in a minute why. They decided to be compelling. See, the reversal of the trend that I've been talking about, the American de-churching, well, it depends on us being an appeal that's compelling to other people. And what I'm saying is, I'm not advocating, please don't hear me say this, I'm not advocating that we're going to change the gospel to make it more palatable. What I'm saying is actually quite the opposite. And what I think our culture needs is we're actually going to try to authenticate it. Because it was the New Testament church that attracted the world to Jesus because of their radical faith, because they no longer lived for themselves, right? Because of their authenticity, because they believed it was true, so they had to. They served unconditionally. They gave sacrificially. They had a faith-centered lifestyle. The community of the church mattered to them. They cared for their neighbors. They invited people. They took all sin seriously. They lifted grace above everything else. They were the kinds of people that kept their word. And oh, by the way, they cared for the sick. They cared for the needy. They cared for the poor. They cared for the marginalized. And this was never heard of until the church came on the scene. And we must never, ever lose what's most compelling about our faith is that we love people because Jesus loves people. And what that means is more than just sitting and listening to me talk about it. It means that we go to work shoulder to shoulder. We model a faith for our kids that they look at and they go, oh my goodness, there's not a better way to do life than the way mom does life. There's not a better way to do life than the way dad does life. Or your friends, wow, I wish I could be a Christian because the way he handles his marriage, I need to learn why he's doing that. That's what we're here to live. Like transform people, because nowhere else in the world will people find a community that is as compelling as the church, because in no other community and no other nation will you have such unity despite your background, despite your past, despite your gender, despite your politics, despite your social class or your physical giftedness, because we are all one in Christ and we have the most compelling news in all of history. And here is that news. That news is you don't need to build your life on finances. You don't get your worth from your identity based on relationships or success or family or what have you. Who you are is grounded in the compelling love of Jesus, because he died on the cross and he said, you are worth everything to me, and that gives you meaning and purpose and significance. And everybody in this world, you at one time, you based your life on something else, and you came up empty. You came up thirsty. You came up unsatisfied. And then you stumbled upon Jesus and your soul discovered a thing that quenched your thirst like nothing has ever quenched your thirst, because the grace of God has said, come and be in relationship with me. Forget your past. I want you with me now and forever. We have the most compelling news. And if we have the most compelling news in all of history, what do we need? What does our community need? What do your kids need? What do your coworkers need? What do our neighbors need? What do the people that haven't moved into our community yet need? They need to, when they get here, when they grow up, they need a compelling church for everyone. Who is everyone? Whoever is thirsty, whoever is hurting, whoever has been burned by life, burned by the church, whoever has a past, whoever is thirsty, whoever is broken, whoever is going through life and it's just gone sour. Where do they turn? They turn to the most compelling community. This is what we want in every community. That's what the church should be. What does a compelling church look like? That's what I think God wants to create. That's what he's doing in us. A compelling church is when Christ is lifted up. It's when Christ is lifted up. Because the most valuable thing we have is the grace of God poured out without partiality on all of us. And it breaks down all barriers. There's nothing more compelling that you and I have to offer than Jesus. There's nothing more valuable that you have than Jesus. And so we lift it up and we show it to the world. How do we do that? By being authentic people. We don't just proclaim Jesus. We live as if we know him, and it literally has changed us. And finally, when you lift Jesus up, And when you really, really believe and you're really authentic, you create appealing places that people are attracted to. Physical places, for sure, but more so emotional places, spiritual places, everywhere you go, here at church and everywhere you go, that are welcoming, that are grace-filled, that are caring, and the world has never seen that. And that's why God gave us the church, because he wants, through us, to make his appeal known. So what are we going to do? We are going to make the appeal appealing again. Why? Because everyone needs Jesus. How are they going to get Jesus? Through a compelling church for everyone. Who is going to do that? You. Listen, I want this to be so clear. Logos and signs and paint and nice chairs and great buildings and facilities and technology, all that stuff is important. It speaks, like it really is a big deal. But compared to who you are, it's not going to compel anything. Anyone. The most appealing thing about the church is you. And how far you're going to let Christ in here and really transform your life. What good is a sign if it doesn't point to a real, genuine Christianity? And that's who we're called to be. What if we could be a radically authentic Christ community, convinced of the real Jesus, compelled to create relevant places and strategies to reconcile people outside the church to God? I'll tell you what will happen. We'll fill this building. People will receive care they never knew was possible. We will reach the lost. We'll heal marriages. People will discover the only one who could ever satisfy. We might not be able to fix the trend nationally, but there are 50,000 people within a 10-mile radius of where we are right now, and we can make an appeal to them. And we can turn the trend around in our community and our families, and that's all we're responsible for. We can do that. We have to do that. Because if we don't, who else will? So we need to make 3 decisions as a church. We need to remove unnecessary barriers. We need to reform the appeal. We need to become compelling. We need to be a compelling church for everyone. One more decision, and that's your decision. Will you be a part of the appeal? You want to see Christian revival? Do you want to see a next generation in love with Jesus? You show me a room full of people who are living it out today, who no longer live for themselves, who the most important thing in the world is God and reconciling others to him. So what does that mean? That means we can only create the future as much as each of us is involved. And so let me give you 3 things. There might be more. Give. Give. For some of you, the radical step of faith you've never taken is to help fund out of worship the ministry of God, because that's what it takes. What if your kids saw that in you? Mom and dad really follow Jesus. Serve. All of us were created to be used by God for something. Not every once in a while, every day, somewhere, but especially in the church. How are you a part of the appeal through First Christian, through our ministries? Maybe you need to take a step to serve somewhere. Invite. Maybe there's somebody you need to invite to hear the gospel, to meet this community. Maybe you're supposed to invest in them before you invite them. Take them out to lunch. Pray for them weekly. I don't know. But I know that God will not be able to make his appeal to this community any other way than through us. Let me pray. God, thank you for the gospel of Jesus. I don't deserve the grace you've shown. I couldn't earn the grace you've shown. We don't just want to go to church. We don't just want to have a church we like. We don't just want to have a church that meets our needs. What do we want to do? We want to actually do what we're about to sing about. We want to follow you anywhere. We want to be all in on your plan for reconciliation in our community. We believe that if we commit to you, God, daily, weekly, year over year, that you, God, will be able to transform the trend in our community. And that's what we pray for. We pray for a growing family by you, God, getting a hold of us and making the church compelling for everyone who's thirsty. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, would you stand and let's sing.